everyone, so today I'm gonna show you how many moves I can last against the boat of LASKER in chess, which has 2640 elo. So let's get right into tackling this with white pieces. First I just to move my pawn to e4. It moved its pawn to e5. So now I should just calmly develop my knight to c3 and now my knight to f3. It moved its knight to c6. So now I should move my bishop to b5 attacking its knight. It moved its bishop to b4 attacking my knight. But for that I should just calmly move my pawn to a3. It captured my knight with its bishop, so I should recapture it with my pawn. It castled to the king's side, so now I should also castle. It captured my opponent e4 with its knight, so I should move my rook to e1 threatening its knight. They retreated its knight to d6, so now I should capture its knight with my bishop. It recaptured my bishop with its pawn, so now I should capture its pawn on e5 with my rook. It moved its knight to c4 threatening my rook, but I should just calmly retreat my rook to e1. It captured my pawn on d1 with its queen, so I should recapture it with my rook. It moved its bishop to f5, so now I should move my knight to e1 protecting this pawn. It moved its rook to d8, so now I should capture it with my rook. It recaptured my rook with its rook, so now I should move my king to f1 controlling the square of e2. It moved its pawn to h6 preparing a retreat square for its king to move on. So now I shall move my pawn to b3 attacking its knight. It moved its knight to d2 check, so I shall move my king to e2 threatening it. It moved its knight to e4, move my pawn to c4. It moved its pawn to b5 offering for a trade, which I will decline and move my knight to d3 developing it. It moved its knight to c3 check, so I shall move my king to e3. It moved its pawn to c4 capturing my pawn, so I should recapture it. It moved its rook to e8 check, so I should move my king to d2. It moved its knight to e4 check. I should move my king to d1. It moved its rook to d8, so now I should move my bishop to e3, developing it and threatening its pawn. It moved its knight to d6, so now I should just calmly capture it with my bishop. It captured my opponent c4 with its knight, so I should move my pawn to a4, a5. Captured my opponent g2 with its bishop, I should move my pawn to a6, creating a passer. It moved its pawn to c5, capture it with my bishop. Moved its pawn to f6, I should move my pawn to a7. It moved its bishop to f3 check, so I should move my king to c1. It moved its rook to a8, so now I should move my knight to b2, offering for a trade. It declined my trade and moved its knight to e5, so I should move my rook to a3, threatening its bishop. It retreated its bishop to e3, so now I should move my pawn to f4, threatening its knight. It moved its knight to d7, threatening my bishop. I should just calmly retreat my bishop to e3. It moved its king to f7. So now I should move my rook to c3, threatening it. It moved its pawn to c6, protecting it. Now I should move my pawn to f5, controlling these two squares. Pawn to c5. So now I should move my knight to c4, developing it. Now I should move my knight to d6 check. It moved its king to e6. So now I shall move my knight to b5. And now I shall move my bishop to b4. It moved its bishop to e4. So now I shall move my rook to a3, pinning it to the king. It moved its pawn to f5. So now I shall move my pawn to h4, controlling the square of g5. It moved its knight to f6. So I shall move my pawn to c4, developing it. It moved its knight to d7. So now I shall move my pawn to h5, controlling the square of g6. It moved its knight to f6. I shall move my rook to e1. And now I shall move my bishop to b8. It moved its king to d7. So now I shall move my rook to d1 check. It moved its king to c6. So now I shall move my rook to d6 check. It moved its king to b7. So now I shall move my rook to d7 check. It moved its king to c6. Now I shall move my rook to c7 check. It moved its king to b6. So now I shall move my rook to a7, threatening its bishop. It moved its pawn to g5. So now I shall move my rook to e6 check. It blocked the check with its bishop. So now I should capture its pawn with my rook and threaten its knight. It moved its knight to g3. So now I should just calmly capture it with my bishop. It moved its pawn to f4. So now I should retreat my bishop to f2, pinning this pawn to the king. It moved its rook to c8. So now I shall move my knight to d6, threatening its rook. It moved its rook to c7. So now I shall move my knight to b5, protecting my pawn. It moved its rook to c8. So now I shall move my knight to d6. It moved its rook to g8. So now I shall move my knight to f5. It captured my pawn on a7 with its king. So now I shall move my knight to a7, forging both of its rook and its bishop. It moved its rook to e8, threatening my knight. But for that, I should just calmly capture its bishop on c6 with my knight and check the king. It moved its king to b7. So now I should just calmly capture its pawn on c5 with my bishop. It moved its pawn to g4. So now I should move my king to d2. I shall move my rook to g6, threatening its pawn. It moved its rook to h8. So now I shall move my knight to e5, developing it. It moved its rook to c8. So now I shall move my rook to g7 check. It blocked the check with its rook. So now I should capture it with my rook and check the king. It recaptured my rook with its king. So now I should move my king to e2. And now my king to f3. It moved its king to a6. Now I should just calmly move my king to e4. It moved its king to b7. So now I should capture its pawn on f4 with my king. It moved its pawn to g3. I should move my knight to f3, threatening its promoting square. And now I should move my king to g3. And now I should capture its pawn with my king. It moved its king to c6. So I should move my bishop to g1 and retreating it. And now my pawn to c5. Knight to e5 check. It moved its king to d5. So now I shall move my pawn to c6. It moved its king to d6. So now I shall move my bishop to h2. It moved its king to c7. So now I shall move my king to f3. And now in this position I shall move my bishop to g1. And now I shall move my bishop to d4. It moved its king to d6. So now I shall move my bishop to b6, my pawn to c7, and now finally I should promote my pawn to a queen and give a check, It moved its king to e5, capturing my knight, so let's do checkmate. I can move for my queen to c6, and now my queen to e4, reject, king g4, queen e6, and now I should not do stalemate and king to g5. It moved its king to g7. Now I should move my queen to g6, check. It moved its king to g8. Now I should move my bishop to d4 to do checkmate. So let's review the game. That is analyzing the game.
Nice win. You outplayed them in the endgame.
So let's see which moves we made. None of us made any brilliant moves. I made 8 great moves, which is a lot. It didn't make any. I made 44 best moves while it made 41. I made one mistake while it made 2. And then none of us made any miss or blunder. So now for the opening, middle game, and end game ones. In the opening, I did best while he did great. In the middle game, we both did great, and in the end game, I did best while he did excellent. So now for the elo, it did 2000 and I did 2400. So now for the accuracy, it did 86.1% and I did 91.2%. So let's start the reviewing. And I will also just to let you listen to the coach what it is saying, because it will give a better explanation.
The classic e4. You're staking a claim in the center. Nice. Bishop b4 develops the bishop, attacks the knight on c3. That's the only move. You found the chef's kiss move. That's the only move. And you nailed it. What a find. You saw that pawn way across the board and snagged it. Nice. You just snagged a free pawn. That's what I call a bargain. Let's go. You're no longer winning, but you're still in a better position. It's all good. This threatens to win a bishop through a fork. They took your pawn for free? That's rough, buddy. That's the only move. You found it. Insane. You are threatening to win a rook through a fork. You found the only move. What a find. Great find. This was the only move that works. You found the only move. What a find. This is huge. Nice fork. Material is incoming. Are you kidding me? You got a free knight. Nice steal. Smooth like butter. You're serving a fork with a side of bishop. Bon appetit. You got a free bishop. Nice steal. Smooth like butter. That's checkmate. Bro thinks he's Hikaru.
So I hope that you liked the video. Just make sure to like and subscribe. Please comment how you thought the video was. And have a nice day.